Thanks for coming today. I'm excited that we have Scott joining us today. Really quick, just Scott, I can say he's a great asset to the city, especially as an elected official. Having a public information officer like Scott has been a welcome thing for Spanish Fork. I told Pete earlier in today's day and age, last week Scott and I were at a conference for the Utah League of Cities and Towns. One of the speakers on September 11th was Andy Card, who was the White House Chief of Staff for President Bush during 9/11. He was the guy on that iconic picture that's whispering in President Bush's ear when he's in that classroom of second graders that America's under attack. He had a lot of great things to say, but what stuck out to me, one of the things that stuck out to me the most was that his grandmother taught him that said, taste your words before you spit them out. And then he said the modern version of that is lick your thumbs before you tweet. and I kind of like that. Scott helps us out on the city side that way, making sure our messaging is clear, concise, and coherent to our citizens in a lot of different ways, so we can make sure that people are informed as much as possible. So we appreciate him being here, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Francis.
Okay, Scott, we appreciate you being here. So Mike's already said you're the public information officer for Spanish Fork, and he's seen the light in building a new house here. And I don't know when you'll be moving in, but sometime soon, hopefully before Christmas.
Next spring.
Next spring, yeah. Not quite before Christmas.
No.
If you'd had Chris build, then you would have been in before Christmas. He has a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old at home. He got his communications degree at the University of Utah, and then he got his Master's of Public Administration at BYU. So he's legal to cheer for whoever's winning when BYU plays University of Utah. So, but we're happy to have you here. He's going to speak today about the library expansion and what's involved with that. So we'll turn the time over to Scott.
Awesome. Well, it's a privilege and an honor to be here today with you, Rotarians, and appreciate you reaching out to me and having me here today to talk a little bit about what the city's doing for a new library. As Dr. Franson mentioned, I did go to both the University of Utah and BYU, but I bleed red, so we're 9 years running with victories on that side. So before we jump in... Before I jump into the library, oftentimes, the most common question that I get asked at the city and a lot of our city officials is, what's new in the city in terms of business? So just to give you kind of a recap or a little summary of what we're expecting here business-wise in the community, you all may have seen Lowe's is well underway, under construction. They anticipate that they'll be up and running by Black Friday this November. Chili's, which is just kind of down the road there, right in front of Walmart. Their walls are going up, and I think they plan on being opened in December. We've got Mobetta's, another restaurant that's doing a remodel. It's a new business to town, but they're opening up on Main Street. I don't have a timeline on that. And then the hospital is coming along very well, and they anticipate being open next fall. So August, September is kind of the timeline that they're looking on there. And city's always in contact with new businesses looking to come to town, and always looking for different ways that we can provide those different business options and amenities to our residents. So that's kind of a recap of where we are in terms of business. And I'll just jump right into the library. So to give you a little bit of an idea, kind of an agenda of what I'll talk about today, we'll talk about the history of the library, how we got to where we are today in terms of building a new library, what the city's plan is for a new library, and a little bit about the timeline. And before, again, I jump into that, thank you for your organization's contributions in the community. I just yesterday was speaking to a former member of, I guess, the old JC Club who came in to bring some photographs of their organization and talk a little bit about what they had done. And it's really you, the boots on the ground, individuals in the community that make a huge difference in our community, and we really appreciate it from the city's perspective. We really appreciate the work that you do in the community to make Spanish Fork an even better place for our residents to live and for individuals to do business and be members of our community. So jumping into the library. So the library was originally built back in 1965. It's there on the corner of Center Street and Main Street at what we call City Park. And when it was built, the city had a population of about 6,800 people. We estimate now we're anywhere between 40 and 45,000. We'll have a better idea next year when the census comes out, but that's a huge difference, right? You have a library that was built, gosh, almost 50 years ago, that was built for a population of 6,800 people and has served our residents well. There was a renovation that took place back in 1998 to free up some of the space in the basement, to add more circulation space and whatnot. But again, the library served the community well, but the community has changed. And not only have we changed, but we've grown drastically. And so for a number of years, city officials, city staff heard from residents, we need a new library. And on top of that, we heard we want a recreation center. So the city started looking at different options on how we might be able to fulfill that. To kind of give you an idea of how busy our library is, so this was for 2018. Some of these statistics just reflect how much the library is actually used. So in 2018, a total of 234,000 people in and out of the library throughout the year, and that includes people coming for, to check out books, coming for programs, coming to special events at the library. So a lot of people use the library. One thing that I thought was really interesting, on average, each physical book or item at the library is checked out on average almost 6 times per year. And we have a relatively small circulation compared to other libraries of the same city size because we just don't have the space. And they have a turnover rate, which means if a book isn't checked out after a certain period of time, you take it off the shelf and get something new. Our turnover rate is really fast because we just don't have the space to keep books on the shelf if they're not being checked out. Programs over time, I think historically libraries have been kind of a place for reading, right? You go check out a book. But as our society has developed, programs have become more prevalent and more of a focal point for libraries. And so a lot of what we focus on at the library is not only providing opportunities for children and adults to check out books, but also programs to help early literacy. We do some programming classes for teens. We do adult classes centered around, I think we have one that's not needlepoint, but crochet, and we have some other adult classes that we offer at the library. But programs is a huge thing that we push at the library to get people to come in and be a part of their community. But some of the issues and challenges that the library faces include, number one, just the lack of space. Again, it was built for a community of 6,800 residents, and we are well beyond that. We have one program room, which if you have, for example, the Harry Potter escape room, which we do in the fall. Are people familiar with the escape room concept? You go into a room and there are little clues that you have to try and find your way out. Well, we do one in the fall that's Harry Potter themed, and that takes the program space. Well, when that's going on for those 1 or 2 weeks, we can't hold any other programs. We can't do any of our reading, story times with the children, any of the teen classes, because there's no other space in the library to do it. And oftentimes our programs bleed out into the circulation area because we have so many attendees that we can't fit them all into that one program room, and so we line up tables down the circulation area to get our program attendees in and out. And we are literally using every space available in the library for storage. So this is an unused restroom that's in the basement that now serves as a storage closet for program supplies and other things. And here's a hallway that, again, we use as storage. Don't show the fire marshal these. I don't know how he would feel about that. But that's the nature of the library at this point. Another big issue that we face at the library is just a lack of parking. There's no dedicated parking lot, no dedicated off-street parking for the library. It's all on-street. And if you try going during lunch, you're fighting with Barry's patrons and other Main Street patrons for that on-street parking. And another downside is we don't have the convenience of a drop-off box where you can drive up, drop your books into the box, and be on your way. So these are some of the issues that we've faced at the library. And as I had mentioned, for a number of years, city officials and staff had heard from residents, we need a new library. And on top of that, we really want a recreation center. So in 2015, I don't know if, I guess life might be a four-letter word, but the Life Center proposal went out to Spanish Fork residents to say, okay, there's a need for a library, and the senior center could use some revamping, and we hear that you really want a recreation center. So if you really want it, let's put it on the ballot and see how you feel about it. Are you willing to pay for it using property tax, using a bond backed by property tax? So the Life Center proposal, again, at about 40,000 residents in about 2015. This is kind of an initial mock-up of what it would have looked like. Again, would have included a new library, recreation, and senior center. And if you're unaware, it failed quite drastically on the ballot. Residents indicated, we don't want to pay for a $40 million facility that's going to increase our property taxes by over $200 a year. We don't want to pay for it that way. And so this was a really good learning experience for city staff and for the elected officials of Spanish Fork. And there were a lot of good takeaways that we took from this experience. What we learned from residents through the Life Center proposal was it was just too expensive. A lot of individuals who voted against the Life Center said, I would support a new library, but I don't support a 3-in-1 facility with a senior center, a library, and a rec center. If you did just a new library, I would be totally on board with that. Another thing that we heard throughout the Life Center process and afterwards was the Life Center was going to be down by the volunteer park, the sports park, right on the south end of town on Volunteer Drive. We heard a lot from residents that was too, I don't want to say remote, but it wasn't in the city center. If we're going to have a city community facility like this, we want it to be in the heart of town. So what we heard was if you could find a better location for a new library or a facility like that, we would be in more support of that. And another thing that we heard a lot was, but you have to preserve City Park. We don't want you to go tear up all the trees and the grass and the park that's there, because that is an amenity that we love, that we don't want to see it go away. So as we walk away and as city council and staff look at this and say, well, the need for the library, a new library, hasn't gone away just because the residents said they don't want to pay for it through a bond. There's still a need. So how can we meet the need? And we have to identify first, how do we pay for it? And second, is there a better location? Where can we find in town that would better fit the needs for our residents? So we started looking. And since then, we've kind of been in on and off conversations with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints just to the south of the city office building there on 40 South Main. And within the last probably 6 months or so, conversations have ramped up, and the church indicated that they were looking to sell the property. So the city was eager to get on, and I think we're kind of in the final stages of finalizing that purchase agreement for the church property to the south. In terms of timeline, and the city has already acquired this property here. Not actively pursuing these properties. There's some residents that live there, and so we're not pursuing anything there. But timeline, the church will continue to occupy, the wards that are there will continue to occupy the church through, I think, September of next year, at which point we'll take over occupancy of the church. We'll talk a little bit more about timeline down the road. So we figured out the where. We found a place in the heart of town. We're preserving City Park. We're not going to disrupt that. But now the big question, here's a photo of the church. So how? And at the city, we've been referring to this as the plan. So kind of backing up a little bit, the genesis for the plan for the library actually came as we started planning for the new fire station, because we took kind of a unique approach at funding the fire station. As many of you are probably aware, the city is actually going to break ground on Fire Station 62, which will be our second fire station in town, on Wednesday, October 2nd. And the construction for that will take about a year and lines up for when the new hospital is completed, so that our fire station can help facilitate those calls for service for the hospital. Anyway, so as we started planning for the new fire station and how to finance that and pay for that, it helped give us an idea of how we could potentially fund the library. Now, the fire station is using a wide variety of different funds, right, to fund it. It's not one just funding source, and property taxes is one of those fund sources. So here's that fire station site. It's up off of Canyon Road at the intersection of Canyon Road and Spanish Fork Parkway. So as we looked at it, we identified how we could hold the tax rate and raise the tax rate. And I'll explain what that means in greater detail. So how property taxation works in the state of Utah is, as your property values increase, to compensate, your tax rate decreases, so that the cities and all the taxing entities receive the same revenue plus new growth as they did the year before. So again, as your home value goes up, you'll see on your property tax statement that your property tax rate went down so that it generates the same revenue for the taxing entities. Here's historically looking at how the city has approached property taxes. Cities have the option to either hold the tax rate, which means if your property values go down in 1 year, the city, through public hearings and whatnot and approval of the city council, has the option to hold the property tax rate, which means your value goes up, but instead of having the rate go down, they maintain where the rate was to get additional tax revenue to pay for city services. So that's one option. The city used this back in 2013, and I don't recall what the project was for in 2013 that we opted to hold the rate. But then we didn't hold the rate in 2014, 15, 16, 17. But in 2018, we decided to hold the property tax rate, which generated $150,000 that we could put towards the new fire station. And the plan was, let's do this for 3 years so that in year one, we hold the rate and it generates $150,000. In year two, we hold the rate again, and it generates $150,000 from the year before, plus a new $150,000. So in year two, you get $300,000. And then in year three, we'll do it again. $150,000, $150,000, $150,000 gets you $450,000, all putting that nearly $1 million towards the construction of the new fire station. So, for example, here's the property tax rate in 2018 would have been 0.000955 if we had, that was the starting rate. Because property values went up, Utah County comes back and says, okay, based off of the increase in property values in Spanish Fork City, your property tax rate will go down to 860. I'll just leave off those 3 zeros. So we would have had a 0.095 drop in the property tax rate. We said, okay, how can we generate $150,000? You know, what will we generate if we hold the property tax rate at the 955 in 2019? And again, that generated $150,000 that we could put towards the fire station. So the orange is that revenue that is generated by holding the property tax rate. And the annual impact on the average home in Spanish Fork City was about $9.67, which comes out to being about 81 cents per month, which in stark contrast to the Life Center proposal, which was about $200 a year. $9 is, from what I remember in my arithmetic, is a lot less than $200. So then we thought, well, what if we follow the same approach with the library? But instead of holding the rate, because we've held the rate for the fire station, if we increase the rate slightly to generate funds for a new library. And rather than saying, well, how much is it that we want to generate for the new library, we said if we were to hold the rate, so we're holding the rate at 955, and then in 2019, by holding the rate, we would have been at this 60 with the fire station to still get our $150,000. So we thought, okay, well, let's take that difference that would have gone to the fire station because of how the rates worked out, and then increase it to add on for the library. So we'll jump, here's kind of our final. So what we ended up doing was we increased the city's property tax rate to the 991, which generates in this first year about $180,000 that would go to the library. And the total impact on the average home is about, combined with what would have carried over from the fire station plus the increase in the rate, it's about a $10, almost $11 impact on the average home plus the $9 for the fire station. So the total impact on the average home is about $21. And the intent, again, is it's a 3-year plan for each. So for the fire station, we're in year 2. And so we'll hold the rate one more year for the fire station to pay to generate that additional $150,000. And then after that, we'll hold the rate for the library to generate additional funds to help with the construction cost of the library. So what's the kind of the impact, again, for the new fire station, that 3-year plan? On average, it's about 81 cents per month on the average home, and about 95 cents on the average home for the new library. Over the year, again, it's about $967 for the fire station, and for the library, it's about $1150 for a total impact of about $21. So for the average home, it's going to have an impact of anywhere between, or your property tax that would go to Spanish Fork City would increase from $138, $139 about, to $159. So about a $21 difference over 1 year. As we looked at different funding options, and do we bond, do we make the community go through another bond election where it tears your community apart because you get some people that are so on board with the property or with the proposed facility or project, you get others that are against it. Do we want to really put our residents through that if we don't have to? Can we find a different way to finance it that it's not going to cost them nearly as much as a $40 million bond? We still get the facility that we need, but we don't create kind of that contention within the community over a project that we need. Another question that we get asked as we talk about this is, okay, well then how do we compare to other communities? And we're happy to say that here in Spanish Fork, we actually have the lowest property taxes of all of the cities in Utah County. Now this is a little bit misleading because when we first pulled this together, Eagle Mountain was the lowest. And then we were diving into the numbers a little bit more, and they actually contract with Unified Fire out of Salt Lake County for their fire service. So the rate that's listed here doesn't include their fire service. Once you include fire service for Eagle Mountain, they are just above Mapleton. So they would have the 3rd highest property tax in the county. So where we would have been had we not done anything, we're the lowest. And then by increasing it by $21, we're still the lowest by about 25%. The next closest would be Linden. And so we look at this and we feel that we provide, as a city, we provide great, if not the best service in the county to our residents. We have utilities that other cities can't or don't provide, like SFCN, and they do such a great job, and we feel like we do such a great job with what we have compared to what other communities are doing in the county. So in terms of timeline, so we're in September now, so the fire station construction is going to begin in October, so next month. Right now, in terms of the library, we're in what's called the feasibility study phase. So we are working with an architect to identify how big should the library be. We got to find kind of, I like to call it the Goldilocks number, right? We don't want it to be too big, but we don't want to open a library that the day we open the doors, it's already too small to serve our residents. So we've got to find that right spot. So we're working with an architect right now, studying other libraries that have been constructed in the state recently, and really trying to identify what is the proper size for a new library in Spanish Fork City. That feasibility study will carry over into the beginning of next year, at which point we will hire the architect as well as the general contractor to start designing the facility. And we'll have them work together because there's some cost savings in that if we bring the general contractor in at the beginning, then we don't get a set of plans that we then take the general and he says, oh, well, no, you've got to change this and it's going to be better if you do this, and here's all these change order fees. So we'll hire both of them at the beginning of next year to go through the whole design process. The fire station will be completed next September, about the same time Intermountain Healthcare Hospital opens up. We'll bid out the construction for the library towards the end of next year with plans on construction beginning in spring of 2021. And we anticipate it will take about a year to construct the new library. So I anticipate that it'll be completed in about spring, summer of 2022. Excuse me. Any questions? I know I kind of flew through those rather quickly. I wanted to give you guys some opportunities to ask questions.
What about the old library?
Good question. We don't know. We don't know what we'll do with it. If we continue to use it as city office space, we still run into the issue of it not having parking. So if we were to move a department over there, where are they going to park? looking at other amenities or ways that we could reconfigure the park and use that space for maybe some other purpose. I know one common thing that we've heard as we've implemented the RAP tax was some residents are really interested in having an outdoor amphitheater. Is that the right place for something like that? We don't know. We'll continue to study that, but certainly I'd anticipate that City Park is going to stay how it is, but what we end up doing with that building, well, I don't know at this point. Great question. So there's already a parking lot. Oh, sorry, for Pete. So the first question was what were the plans for the new, or for the existing building on the library lot? This new question is, how do we solve the problem with parking with the new library being placed at the location of the church? So the church currently shares parking with the city offices. And granted, they're usually only occupying the church when nobody's at the city offices, right? So we anticipate that there could be some shared parking with the new library because of the existing parking lot. But we will have to plan for some off-street parking for the new library on that lot. As we've planned for the new library, obviously we need more programming space, and that will be something that we look at is how can we facilitate additional programs. But we need shared community space so that maybe it's not a library program, but we have some other event that we would like to host at the city offices. Right now, we're kind of limited. We have the fairgrounds with a couple of facilities down there that we can use, but the city offices in terms of community space is lacking. And so one plan for the new library would include a new city council chamber, which, again, they use that every other Tuesday for a few hours. And so how do we use it the rest of the time? The plan would be to program that room such that it could be used for library programs throughout the day and on evenings that it's not being used by city council and or the planning commission. As well as looking for additional office space for our utility billing and finance staff. They're kind of bursting at the seams with what they have. And so without a question, the first and foremost purpose of this building will be for the library with a few additional purposes with finance and a shared community space for events and city council. So I think I can speak on behalf of Mike that the city, not only city elected officials, but also city staff, this is something that we are really excited about. And as we've talked with community groups and as we've spoken with residents, the general feel that we get from the residents is they're really excited as well. That there's a need that we're trying to fill, and we feel like that this is the best way that we can do that. And we're really anxious to see this new library go up and see how it will contribute not only to the quality of life for our residents, but also the various services and programs that we can provide for those residents in library services. Well, thank you for your time. Again, at the city, we do really appreciate the work that you do within the community to make Spanish Fork a better place to live, to recreate, to be, and really appreciate the contributions that you guys make to the community. So thank you for having me here today.